Hello and welcome to the Ocean Impact Podcast. In this episode, we catch up with Ben Player, who is not only a 3-time world bodyboarding champion, a fantastic advocate for the ocean, a business leader and entrepreneur, but just an all-round great guy. I first met Ben during his role as an ambassador for Take 3 for the Sea and was really impressed not only by his incredible athleticism, but his passion and commitment for conservation. We caught up with Ben near his home in Avalon Beach, New South Wales, Australia. I hope you enjoy this episode with Ben. If you do, please write a review and share it widely. Thank you for listening.
Take the ocean out of me.
Benny, here we are.
Tim, hello.
We're going to have a bit of a chat at what is a pretty impressive little office space. This is actually where you work out of in here in this little boat shed.
Yeah, that's right. I work out of here with a mate of mine and started working out here about 6 months ago, and it's been a game changer. I love, any time I get stressed out in my work day and feel like I need a bit of a break or need to get a different perspective on something, I just walk out there, look in the ocean and kind of steady yourself, and it feels great.
I can imagine the inspiration would definitely flow being in this space. Tell everyone tuning in where we are in the world right now and maybe even a little bit of what this place means to you.
So right now we're in a place called Clareville, which is on the Pittwater side of Avalon where I grew up. Avalon's a place, the first kind of hometown that I ever lived in. And now I'm 40 years old and lived here for 38 of those years, I'm pretty sure. So I'm pretty familiar with it all. I used to play on this beach when I was a kid, and probably used to jump off this wharf here when I was a kid and everything like that. So it's a very personal place to me. And for me personally, being near ocean is super important as well, or being near water. I've noticed that most times in my life, most important things have usually happened near the ocean. And I seem to, resonate quite well with it. And whenever I do interviews and stuff like that, it always seems to happen around the ocean. The guy who's filming right now, his name's Josh Kirkman, and we actually did another podcast, and that was at Avalon Beach. And it's kind of I always kind of choose those places to do things like this.
Yeah, well, obviously, your career as an athlete revolves around the ocean and your business as well. So let's go a little bit deeper into that. So what the ocean means to you, maybe even sharing some of the highlight experiences or the most formative experiences that you've had in amongst the ocean. You've spent probably most of your life in the ocean or around it. So just go a little bit deeper there for us.
Yeah, a big part of my existence has been in the ocean, like what you say. And some of the most important moments of my life have been in the ocean. Like winning world titles, competing, having the best moments of my life have been in the ocean. There's such a strong bond that I have with it. As long as it's they're learning a lot of things from the ocean. It's kind of one of the most attractive things about the ocean, and something that a lot of people don't really understand, is the fact it does not ever care who you are or what you've done or anything like that. It'll smash you equally as much as anyone else, and it's the constant equalizer. And I think it's a really beautiful thing about the ocean is that you can think that you're someone, and you can think that you're doing all this and doing all that, and you've got this huge ego and this somewhat of an awareness of who you are, and then it's no, you're not that. This is who you are. You're nothing. And I think it's been really healthy for my growth as a human being to always be in that ocean and to learn from that, because I started being a professional bodyboarder from the age of 16. I was getting paid a pretty good amount of money off Quicksilver and Moray bodyboards at the time, bodyboarding. And so I got pretty ahead of myself and started thinking, hey man, I'm pretty cool. I'm doing all this stuff and I'm making good money and all that. And then through my kind of 20s, and I learned a lot from the ocean, but then I kind of equalised through that period. And then 30s, I became more and more aware about equality and stuff like that. And it's been a really important, growth curve for me, is having that, and it's all due from the ocean. So for me, my perspective on the ocean is somewhat different than someone else's. A lot of people look at the ocean and they think, it's a playground, and then you get to do all this kind of stuff. But for me, it's more of a kind of spiritual centre. I go there to equalise and I go there to balance, and and kind of remove myself from everything else and get perspective quite often on things. So that's a really important place for me.
So safe to say, if we took the ocean out of your life, that would be a bit of a bleak existence for you.
I think I'd be somewhat crazy. I'll probably look even more crazy than what I do. It would definitely be super bleak, and I'd go as far to say I'd be quite depressed.
When were you, so everyone tuning in, you've been an ambassador for Take 3 for the Sea for a long time, and that's probably where we really forged the next level of our relationship, and we've been able to talk about significant environmental issues and try and share those stories. I recall when a few years ago we told a story and it never really saw the light of day, but I think we should reflect upon it now. It was your experiences with dolphin here in Pittwater, and what was an incredible story, and I think we do need to dig it out of the archives and get it out there. We can talk about the reasons why we chose not to, but just recount a little bit about that experience. I could just see how profound that was, and I think everyone would similarly find it profound.
That was one of the best experiences of my life, 100%. It was like I somehow managed to create like a really beautiful bond with a wild dolphin. And it began one day I was driving along the road down at Palm Beach, and I saw all these people peering over the water at the wharf there, where the wharf goes out, where the ferry goes out takes people to the Central Coast. What they're looking at, so I quickly parked the car and ran out there and saw there's a dolphin like just swimming all around. So I was like, right, I just stripped off my shirt, took my shoes off, jumped in my pants, and was swimming around with this dolphin. And it was like, at the time, like it was really like a really beautiful creature, but it was kind of keeping its distance, and I wasn't trying to get too close to it. I was kind of just letting it do its own thing. And then for the next week, or 7 or 8 days after that, I'd go back there every day, and I would be there, and we'd play, and managed to kind of create this crazy relationship, to the point where like I felt like we were kind of communicating with each other. Like I'd go underwater, and I nicknamed it Dolly, and Dolly would grab a piece of seaweed and would bring it up and give it to me, or like another time it was like a leather jacket fish. It grabbed it like in its nose and pushed it up to me, and I'd hold the leather jacket and study it, and it would study it with me, and then it would show me like a buried anchor under the water. I pulled the anchor up and we'd study it and stuff like that, and like I was always nuts, man. Like I felt like one of those weird dolphin trainers, and not the kind that try and do it to pick up chicks, because I had a relationship at the time. But like I'd be able to put my hand up underwater, and she would know to like swim into my hand, and I'd get dragged along by it, and it would open up its mouth and I'd scratch its tongue, and it was a crazy amount of trust that we developed in this short amount of time. And it came to an unfortunate end, because like a lot of people started finding out about it, and they started jumping in. And instead of, I guess, giving her a chance to be able to have her own space and do what she wanted to do and come to them, like they were all going up to her and trying to like pat her and stuff like that. And that's one thing I never tried to do with her. I'd just kind of like let her have her own space, and I'd be on the peripheral and let her kind of come up to me. And I think that's how we developed that relationship, is just like through kind of understanding about what the barriers were, and like an all good kind of relationships. But it kind of made me really aware about like how intelligent these creatures are. You know, the fact it was like trying to interact with me, trying to show me things and stuff like that. And then sadly, I read in a news article about 2 years later, it actually drowned over on the Central Coast, and it was like it drowned as a result of marine debris. Like there was this super graphic photo, and it made me so sad, and just thinking about it makes me sad. It like pretty much got strangled in like ropes and a net. And they had this photo, you know, with it up on a boat, and it was like eyes were like popping out and stuff like that. It made me so sad. You know, the fact that there I was, like I'd created this beautiful bond and this beautiful relationship with this wild animal. It trusted me, and I trusted it. Like trusted me enough that, you know, and I trusted it enough that it would open its mouth and I'd scratch its tongue. You know, I knew it wasn't going to bite down on my hand. And there was this beautiful bond that we created, and then I really felt like I let her down and kind of betrayed that trust by you know, being one of those humans that potentially aided in her death. Like I used to go fishing and stuff like that, and I probably used to throw a fishing line and stuff out there, and created this real sense of awareness about, you know, what happens when we do put stuff into the ocean, and it's that, You know, it kills marine creatures, and beautiful marine creatures too, that shouldn't ever be, you know, at risk of that. So it's really sad, but a really confronting thing, and I guess that was a big reason why I really wanted to get behind Take 3 as well, because I thought it was a really beautiful message about, you know, just being a little bit responsible and also aware about where all of our stuff goes, all of our rubbish goes, and our waste goes, and just like not necessarily having to make any huge life changes, just being aware. And so, yeah, I've been a kind of ambassador for all things environmental and trying to reduce the amount of plastic waste that goes into the ocean since then.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when it goes from a statistic and, you know, everyone is aware of the big numbers around how many individual animals suffer as a result of this problem of plastics and marine debris. But that personal relation, that personal connection turns that tiny fraction of the big number into something just so profound.
Yeah.
What about then, I mean, so we worked with a legend, Adrian Emerton, to tell your story, thinking this was an incredible story that would motivate thousands and thousands of people around the world to think, oh, next time I see that bit of rope on a beach, the same bit of rope that a boat owner or a fisherman might have been able to prevent from killing Dolly. And when we told that story, it was bizarre, but within a matter of hours, we had people from the environment space sort of saying that we were sort of romanticising or even encouraging humans to go and create relationships with wild animals, and that was actually going to cause more harm than good. How did it feel when when that came out and we had to totally reassess what we thought was an incredible piece of communication?
Well, this is the weird thing, is that humans, we all think that we're this elite being and we're at the top of this pyramid and stuff like that. But through my interactions with Dolly and other animals as well, like I've come to the belief that there is such a strong intelligence in so many other animals, and a sense of spirit as well. You know, playfulness and joking and all that kind of things that comes through in other animals. And I think it's pretty silly to think that as humans, like these people's response, saying that as humans, like, oh, we're encouraging this behavior and it's actually really bad for it. It's actually, that animal is actually intelligent enough to make up its decision on what it wants to do. Like in that situation with my interaction with Dolly, it didn't go to every single person in that group. You know, at the later stages of our interactions, there'd be 20 people in the water, but it wouldn't go to any of those other people who would seek me out and come and play with me, because we developed this bond and relationship. Now, it's not like, you know, all these other humans, you know, could have potentially created a bond with it. If it's true what these people are saying, you know, they could have forced a relationship onto it, but it's intelligent enough to know that it doesn't want to do that. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that, you know, the relationship and bond that we had was a unique thing, and I don't think it would really make much of a difference if anyone like just jumped in the water with a wild dolphin. I don't think that interaction is going to happen.
Yeah, and probably some unique circumstances around this dolphin,
Yeah.
You know, maybe being extricated or something from
For sure.
an original population. So, you know, you could almost look at the other side of it and say, well, you know, if it has made these decisions to be a loner and to interact with humans, in some ways, maybe its history was already written in that regard. It had excluded itself from that setting. So, a disastrous story, but I think a really important one, and your insights there are amazing. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into, you know, your attitudes as an environmentalist, and you can maybe start by just sort of saying, have you always been of this mindset around environmental action, or has it swelled and grown over the years? Like, where are you at now compared to where you were as a teenager in terms of your environmental attitude?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as a teenager, I was at the centre of my universe and had no respect or understanding of anyone else in that space. It was all about me and what I wanted to do, and perhaps that's the reason why I excelled as a competitor, because I was like, it was all about me. I blocked out everyone else, and I had a goal, and that's all that mattered. But the older I've become, the more, I guess, aware I've been of things around me and my environment, and just the kind of general knowledge of things. I guess, you know, earlier I touched on the subject that I feel like in my 20s and 30s I really learned from the ocean about equalising and balance, and I guess having more respect for everything and everyone else around me. And I think that's been a really strong thing that the ocean has taught me, is that kind of, to be more aware of everyone else and respecting everything around me. And I think my kind of desires to help the environment has kind of come from that. further compounded by my interactions with Dolly. That's kind of led me to this situation where I'm at in life now, where I'm kind of guess I'm at the stage where I'm seeking as much information as I can find to further grow my I guess experience and knowledge of things on the planet, and I guess how we kind of sit in the balance of things. And yeah, to be honest with you, like I do get pretty depressed sometimes when I see the amount of destruction and bad things that we're doing to the planet, and I don't think it's sustainable, and something definitely needs to change. I mean, population growth is like going crazy. I read a statistic the other day that it's like doubled in the last 30 years or something like that. And that's like, don't quote me on that, it was something like that. But that's gnarly if that's true, because in another 30 years, like, is it going to double again? Like, we're already having issues now. What's going to happen then? And, like, it really starts to make you aware of, like, the potential repercussions of our actions. It might be, all marine life dying, or it might be all of our food sources going, or it might be contamination of water, or it might be carbon in the air and heating up the planet. There's any number of things that might happen, but all of which are going to have an impact on where we're going to be in the future. So the thing is that the time is pretty crucial and critical right now that we do make change. Because if we don't make change and we get to that point, then there's going to be chaos. If we get to that point where we've got shortages of things and there's huge issues with getting water, getting food, getting fish, getting food, whatever it is, society's going to go into chaos, and that's a situation that we really don't want to get to. So I guess, like, as an individual, I'm trying more and more to get more awareness about things I can do to make the world better, and trying to encourage, I guess, other people to do that as well.
Yeah. So that's a great way of, I guess, addressing these problems is to look at yourself and the individual, and we all have a sphere of influence, and for you being such a recognised figure in this space of bodyboarding and as an ocean athlete. But I just wanted to sort of focus a little bit deeper onto that, because you did make a pretty solid, profound public declaration in the context of the Australian bushfires, and particularly, I suppose, the impact on the south coast of New South Wales, a place that's very dear to you. But I'm going to read out your Instagram post, because your 66,000 odd followers reacted mostly in support, but some people maybe not quite as supportive as you'd hope for. But this is a profound declaration. So it says, to Mother Nature and to everyone that has lost something as a result of these fires, I am sorry. I take full responsibility for the way in which you and the home you created has been burnt and treated. When it started burning in Australia, my first emotion was fear. Then fear turned to anger, then anger turned to blame, and now I'm finally sitting somewhere close to acceptance. I now realise that my actions and inactions have contributed to the way that you have been treated. I tried desperately hard to blame the Australian government for the poor management and leadership of the Australian bushfires. I like to think that it was Scott Morrison. If I was Scott Morrison, I would have acted as a leader and been on the ground to help and call on my neighbours to help those in need. I like to think that I would have listened to the Australian people and used all resources available to help all humans, plants and animals that call this great land home. But I realise I'm not the Australian government, but I'm still as much to blame for this crisis happening. From this day I pledge that I will not make those mistakes again. I will use your sacrifices and the fire on your back to ignite a change in myself, and I hope others will follow. I will use my voting power and make choices that I will invert the triangle and put you at the top, us in the middle, and leaders at the bottom. I hope it isn't too late, and I hope you can accept my apology. Love, Ben Player. What was going through your mind at that time, and how does that feel digesting that on reflection?
Like I kind of touched on in that message, I guess my reaction to the bushfires was probably like everyone's. It was like fear. I was like, how is this gonna affect me? How's it gonna affect my lifestyle? And am I gonna lose things and loved ones and all that kind of stuff? And it was a really scary time in Australia. Like our skies were black. I remember one day I was sitting here and the sky was black and there was actually like ash falling. And then a couple of weeks, like this went on for the people that aren't aware, like this went on for weeks and weeks. I think 3 months all up, and it's still burning now. And I guess the reason why I felt the desire to write that post was because something didn't really sit right with me about everyone on social media kind of saying that someone else was to blame. Like everyone was saying like, oh yeah, like this person's to blame, that person's to blame. It's not my fault. Like I've got nothing to do with this. And it was actually something that my brother said after we surfed in a surf spot down south last year. I'll tell you this story about this surf. So we went and had this surf at this beautiful place called Depot Beach. The waves were like 8 to 12 feet, really perfect, incredible huge waves. And it was really crowded, right? And when the session was finished and done, everyone left. But what was left behind was like rubbish and all this kind of stuff. But then there was this thing that happened on social media where the blame game began. Like everyone was saying like, all these people like coming here and doing this and all that. But then that didn't sit right with me. And my brother actually pointed this out. He said like, you know, it's as if like all these people like are saying that they weren't there and they had no participation in any of this. But everyone was. Like we were all there. I was there. So were all the other people, and so were the people making these comments. But instead of them accepting that they were there and they were part of that issue, they try to blame other people because it feels better to blame it on someone else. And this is the same thing that kind of happened within social media after the bushfires. Everyone else was like fearful, scared, and wondering how it was going to affect them. And instead of like saying, hey, like, wow, like this is the result of me, this is the result of my lifestyle choices and my actions, and putting my hand up and saying, hey, I'm going to change things, they go and like blame someone else because it's easier to do that than to accept blame. And so I thought, you know what, stuff this, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm probably going to get scorched for it, but I'm going to say that I'm partly to blame for this because I am. And so are you, and so is Josh over there. Everyone's to blame for this. And it's just a sad thing, but it's the way it is. I mean, we could have, voted for better policies. We could have done many things that might have changed that from happening. But instead we didn't, and then, you know, the result was that these bushfires happened, and then we blame other people for it. It doesn't really sit right with me. But what I also go on to say in that Instagram message was talking about inverting the triangle. Now, this is something that it's been like hasn't been sitting properly with me for a long time, is how I think a lot of Australians think about politics and leadership, that, you know, they're at the top of the kind of pyramid, that we're all down the bottom and we have to look up to them and they make all these changes and stuff. Like, we need to change that way we kind of look at those things, and we need to think about those people working for us. And that essentially is what politics is all about. All these people work for us. So we're at the top. We're at the top of this pyramid. And if we want to make some actions and we want to make some changes, we just need to collaborate and get together and work out that message and then find someone to basically action all those things. And that's something that the Australian public needs to do. I actually think it's a weird psychological thing that's left over from the convict days, is this fear of leadership and fear of anyone else that seems to have more power and authority to them. And in Australia, I really do believe that needs to change. And then we won't be in the situation that we are blaming other people. We're going to be at the centre point of all those decisions and in the power that we can make those changes.
So that's great. You've made that sort of declaration of yourself and taking responsibility, and then that obviously then percolates out to that sphere of influence you have around you, and hopefully that then translates into people then demanding for the change that's going to lead to the future that we all believe in. What are some of the other levers that need to be pulled out there? And this whole new venture for me, and why I'm sitting here having a conversation under this name of the Ocean Impact Organisation podcast, is that for me, it feels time that we need business as unusual. So maybe this is a little bit of a segue into, you know, what happens in your world in the context of how you do business, and maybe it's a bit of a glimpse into what the future could look like with better business for good, purpose-based business.
For sure. It's a good question. So I guess in my life, I've talked about leadership, I've talked about where I've come from with my environmental stances, I've talked about my existence with the ocean and why it's so important to me. So at this stage in my life now, I'm 41 years old. I've been riding a bodyboard all my life and I've been in the ocean the majority of my life. And it's been such an important part of my existence, and I've learned so much from it and owe so much to it as well. I now own a business which imports and distributes like soft surfboards and bodyboards and stuff like that. And I mean, it doesn't really sit right with me too that I talk about making environmental changes and doing good for the environment when, you know, I'm actually importing a product or products that might be detrimental to the environment. Plastics. We're talking about bodyboards or boogie boards and soft surfboards. They're made out of like usually a polyethylene foam core with like a skin around the outside. The way these things are manufactured it's not that bad for the environment. I mean, it's not great, but there would be some kind of a carbon footprint as a result. But what is bad is the way these are wasted or put into landfill, because plastics, as we know, don't really break down that well, and a lot of them are made from like beaded foams, so like an EPS, expanded polystyrene, which has a tendency to break apart and be really hard to contain. And so about 2 years ago, I started heading off in this different direction where I've been trying to find a way to be able to create a bodyboard and a surfboard that's better for the environment. And after 2 years, I'm pretty confident that I've found a solution. I'm not quite there yet, so I can't talk entirely about it, but I'm pretty confident that I've found a solution for a closed loop recycling program for surfboards and bodyboards. And I think that's we can all do our little thing. That's a small little thing. It's maybe not going out and making policy changes that are going to stop bushfires, and it's not necessarily going and stopping all marine debris from getting into the ocean, but it's leveraging my strengths. My strengths are that I'm from a background of surfing, from bodyboarding. I'm in a position with a business that I can make a positive impact and change, and this is how I'm going to do it. And so I've been devoting 2 years of my life into trying to get this thing sorted, and I believe like I'm right there, right on the starting stepping stones of being able to roll this thing up.
That's really exciting, Benny, and I think obviously the need to innovate and improve and lessen the impact of business is really key, but I suppose the other side of it is that the ocean is such an incredible source of inspiration that anyone listening out there who may be on a high and mighty tower going, oh, what's that? Like it's known that the surf industry is full of petrochemical materials and additives, and that of course that has an impact. But look at the power of the ocean going and the surfing community to actually be a force of change, and I think that's finally starting to be realised in Australia now, with some solid campaigning around the drilling for oil and gas around the Bight or along the northern beaches to Newcastle or Sydney. We're talking about seismic testing, and you can mobilise surfers. We don't have the greatest track record in the past. We're quite individual and a little bit selfish sometimes, but when our back is against the wall and when the place that we love so much is threatened, my gosh, can we make a ruckus?
Yeah, that's true. But that comes back to this whole thing about like it's a real human emotion. Is like everyone thinks like I want to make positive change, but I don't want to have to change my lifestyle as a result. Like I want to do all these things, but just as long as I don't have to change, and just as long as I don't have to sacrifice anything in my life. And that's typical. And I think that's something that, as a business owner and any kind of leader and anyone out there, is you need to make sure that any kind of changes that we're making are going to be bite-sized, are going to be small enough that general public is going to be accepting of it, and it's not going to be too much of an extension from their comfort zone. So it's going to be gradual, and it's going to take some time, but by doing that, it's like in the grand scheme of things, over the space of 30 years, we can make vast differences. And so that's something that I'm aware of as well, is like I don't want to go out there and bring out a bodyboard or a surfboard made of wood, because no one's going to buy it. If I can bring out a product that's pretty similar but better, then we'll be accepted. And like I said, just as long as people don't have to change their lifestyle and make too many sacrifices, then they will accept and adopt that.
Yeah, one of the lines on our sort of vision statements in our early business planning was that we need to move this narrative across from that sustainability is a cost or is a compromise to sustainability is profitability. And so what you're saying there is, in a future where we do have this sustainable relationship sorted, people are being sustainable without even knowing or waving the flag. Look at me, I'm being sustainable. It just is.
Yeah, it just is.
But obviously, people like yourself who are those innovators and are going to strive for that change, you take on the burden and the weight of all that, because you need to be the one investing in the expense or finding that way of navigating, because you are getting from a status quo into this new frontier. So
it's so hard, man.
I'll support you wherever I can, mate.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you very much.
So I think, we'll maybe just touch on one other point there before we sort of start to wrap things up. So sort of just thinking about the future and acknowledging that, your life has transformed from being that professional bodyboarder and that being your identity to now moving. You're 41, you're about to get married. Like, how are you feeling now about Ben Player, and how are you feeling about the future in the context of what we've been talking about today? Just a small
that's
question.
A good question.
Definitely not going into the big questions here.
I'd say it's something I've been becoming more and more aware of through my life is like the person that we are when we're 20 doesn't need to be the person that we are when we're 41. You know, we can develop, grow and change all throughout our lives. And the person I'm going to be when I'm 50 and 60 isn't necessarily going to be the same person I was when I was 40. And that's the beauty of being an intelligent and aware person like you and like I am, is that you can constantly be looking at yourself and getting a perspective on where you're at and going like, actually, I could be better. I could change this about myself and I can do that and this. And the person that I am now at 41 compared to the person I was when I was in my teens, 20s, 30s is completely different. And it's constantly evolving. And that's something I really love about myself, is the fact I can get that perspective on myself and see where I've come from and see where I am now. And the most radical change that I had in that 41 years was when I stopped being a professional bodyboarder and then I started being an entrepreneur and owning my own business and trying to find another way to make money, right? There was a huge shift in my outlook on things, because I came from having contracts and just being able to have money to surf, and my single goal was just to get results in an event. That was my single goal. There was nothing else, and I was pretty good at that. And so it was all pretty simple. That's all there was. And then that stopped quite abruptly. I got 2 weeks notice, and then just completely shifted everything and started this new business, this new enterprise with my business partner Dave Winchester, who's also a retired professional bodyboarder. But there was this really hard time where I had to really shift, I guess, my concept of who I was, what my identity was and what I kind of stand for. And that took some time. For a long time, I would for probably the first 2 years actually of the business, whenever the waves were good, I'd be at work and I'd be regretting that I wasn't surfing, because I felt like I should be surfing, because that's where I used to achieve my goals. And then when I was surfing, I'd feel guilty that I wasn't working. So the whole time I had this sense of guilt, because I was like unsure about what my actual identity was and what I guess my kind of goals were. But now, some 5 years after we started this business, I have a firm idea about what my identity is and where I sit in all of this. And I'm quite confident with who I am and comfortable with who I am. And I'm I'd have to say kind of proud of myself for how I made that transition. Because it's not easy for athletes to do. It's actually really, really difficult. You've gone from being someone and having such kind of core focuses to then shifting that and having to adapt into a different lifestyle. But I've always been pretty lucky in that I've been really good at setting goals with my professional career. I used to have a list of goals for every surf which I used to try and achieve. Just small bite-sized kind of goals which I'd go out and try and do, like little technical things and stuff like that. And I was always really good at setting those goals, and that's something that I learned from my professional career, which I was able to adapt into business. It's not much different, business is the same. You want to set one giant grand goal, whatever it might be. It might be owning a waterfront place with a wharf, and you think, okay, so how am I going to achieve that? I'm going to break that down into multiple smaller goals and then actions, and then it becomes achievable, right? And I guess I've really adapted that to my business life, and it's been I've been really fortunate that I can do that, and I had that awareness of how to do that with business.
Awesome. Well, the world is better for having you, Benny, and I'm certainly looking forward to where your career as an individual and as an entrepreneur takes you in the future. So I'm going to leave any closing words to you, mate. Do you want to wrap this thing up and tell people where they can learn more about you if they want to follow you?
Yeah, I guess keep an eye out for what I'm up to with the surfboards and bodyboards. Hope in the next year I get to bring something out into the marketplace. That's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about that. Apart from that, I guess Instagram is probably the best vehicle for all communication. My name is Ben_player. You'll see a bunch of bodyboarding photos up there. I still bodyboard quite a lot.
Very impressive bodyboarding photos and videos, I might add.
I'm very passionate about that still, and I love doing it. It's my freedom place and my spiritual kind of home. So that's where I love to be, and it's still a big part of my makeup. And yeah, stay tuned anyway. But thanks for having me, Tim, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. You're doing great things as well, by the way.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
and take the ocean out of me.